Hi there, I'm Jennifer Ho, and I am the Commissioner at Minnesota Housing. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn about our new Emergency Rental Assistance Program. There are a lot of you out there, and so glad that you have interest in what we're doing. I was thinking a lot that when COVID hit Minnesota, it really hit different people differently. Some people lost their work. Others, like me, just started to work from home. Others were on the front lines, and even in the early days of the virus. The governor and the lieutenant governor put an evictions moratorium in place early because it was a wise public health strategy. But we also know that this has gone on a lot longer than any of us would have hoped. And people have been unemployed for extended periods. Landlords haven't been able to be paid, and they've had bills that they have to pay too. So we are so glad that the last Congress passed COVID-19 emergency rental assistance, which is bringing an extraordinary amount of needed resources to the state of Minnesota. I think it's just really great to have you here today to learn about how this program works. I'm glad to be here with my Deputy Commissioner at Minnesota Housing, Rachel Robinson. So just to double check, if you're here to learn about COVID-19 emergency rental assistance, you are in the right place. We're calling the new program RentHelpMN. Renters, we want to help you get ready to apply. Landlords, we'll tell you how you can prepare. And advocates, we want you to be helpers and help spread the word. We know folks are hurting right now, renters and landlords alike, but help is on the way. We're not yet open for applications, but this is a really good time to get ready. Next slide, please. So some features that you should be aware of. We encourage you to add your questions to the YouTube chat. We've got people monitoring that chat for questions. And at the end of the presentation, Rachel and I will handle as many of those questions as we can process through. Grateful to have ASL interpretation with us today, and should be visible to you throughout the presentation. If you need closed captioning, there's a CC button in YouTube that allows you to turn that on. I also know folks will want to see copies of these slides that we're presenting today. They'll be available soon at www.mnhousing.gov. We're also going to be translating this webinar into Spanish, Hmong, and Somali, and those too will be available at www.mnhousing.gov. So with those basics underway, again, thank you. Thank you for giving us your attention today, and I'd like to turn it over to my deputy, Rachel.
And good afternoon, I'm Rachel. So we will start with the basic sort of good facts about the program and the federal assistance that's now available. In the federal stimulus bill that passed in December, Congress made $25 billion available across the country to help stabilize renters and rental markets. Almost $400 million of that assistance came to Minnesota, to the state, to 7 local governments, and to 9 tribal nations. You may have heard that another $25 billion passed in the American Rescue Plan in March of 2021. If so, you heard correctly. But we are waiting on information on that March program, so can't say much now, except that the good news is that we are sure it's more funding to help more renters for a longer period of time. So while the federal government created the program, Minnesota and our partners are setting out to create what that looks like for the state of Minnesota. And from the beginning, we have worked to create a program that reaches all who need the assistance. We started by listening to your feedback about the program we operated in 2020. That was called COVID-19 Housing Assistance Program. And we have made improvements in efficiency and communication with renters and landlords in designing RentHelpMN. We've also been guided by a set of core values from the start. First, to make the program human-centered, using strategies to reach those that might otherwise be left behind. To be anti-racist, using intentional strategies to not perpetuate racial disparities. To focus on the customer experience to minimize stress and uncertainty. To be transparent, timely, and flexible. And finally, to engage critical partners to equitable outcomes by working with groups that are led by and work for the communities most impacted by COVID. Just make sure our interpreter is caught up before I move on. Before we move into more detail on the program and getting ready, I would like to introduce you to the website for RentHelpMN. This website is now live at RentHelpMN.org. That's RentHelpMN.org. As we've mentioned, we are not quite ready to take applications. We will be soon, but we do have resources up on the site to help renters and landlords get ready to apply. I'll say more about these resources after I share more about the program. Once we go live, this website will be the place to get into the online application when it's ready. So how do you apply when applications open? Here's a quick overview. You will be able to apply online through RentHelpMN.org. When RentHelpMN is ready to take applications, there will be a button on the site that says apply here. If you are able, you will be able to apply online and upload your documents. Submit and sign online. If you prefer, you will be able to apply with a paper application, which you will be able to download and print, or you can request by mail and get a postage paid envelope to send it back. Right now is the time to get ready. The program is not open for applications, but it will be soon. And the more you know now about what you will need to have when applications open, the better positioned you'll be to get that material in. So who is eligible? Who is this program for? It is important to note that this assistance is only for renters. Homeowners are not eligible per the federal rules. We know that homeowners are also struggling in the pandemic, and we hear you. We hope to know more about how federal stimulus dollars might help homeowners with mortgages and utilities soon. But from the federal government, this program, RentHelpMN, is for rent and renters only. COVID-19 impacts are one of the eligible requirements. And that may include increased costs to your household, loss of work, reduced hours, financial strain from caring for children while schools were closed, financial strain of health challenges, and other stresses of the pandemic. The reality is we know that for many renters right now, these circumstances are your circumstances, and you are facing these stresses. Housing stability is another requirement, and that means the household is either at risk of losing their housing by eviction or being forced to move, or the renter just isn't confident that they can make their rent payments in the future. Another requirement is to be within income limits, and we know it's really hard to communicate income levels using acronyms. So we've tried to build out a little bit of a guide for how to think about whether you might be in the income limits. For instance, if you know that you access some government programs such as food stamps, MFIP, general assistance, and you know their income hasn't gone up recently, it's very likely you would qualify under RentHelpMN. The same goes if you live in affordable housing where you income qualified for your apartment. Otherwise, to give you a sense of these numbers, the lowest income level we would serve the income level in the county with the lowest incomes, because these do vary by county, of $40,700 for one person. If you're within that, everywhere in the state of Minnesota, you would qualify, because that's the lowest income at 80% anywhere in the state. Whereas in the metro area, and this covers the cities and well out into the suburbs, that limit would be for one person, $54,950, and for four people, $78,500. Of course, there are tiers in between and a big table to share what that looks like, and they do change, and they change by place and over time. So if you're on the edge of these requirements or you're not sure, we offer you to call 211 for help figuring out how you fit within the income requirements. We will also have more resources up on our website soon. So that was a lot on eligibility, but when applications open up soon, we will also be inviting renters who owe back rent to apply for RentHelpMN first. We want to start by helping renters who are behind and to help them keep up with their housing. After we feel comfortable we've cleared the backlog, then we will open applications to those who need only future help for forward rent. So what kind of assistance is available? The assistance is tied to the pandemic, and this comes from the federal rules. So we can cover rent and utilities back to March 13, 2020. So for rent, that means April 1st rent, not March 1st rent. So sometimes you'll see April 1st. Past due months and forward rent months add up to get the total of up to 15 months per household. This is where the assistance is seen as emergency assistance. And we call this a clock for each household of how many months of assistance are available. And in the bill that passed in December, that's up to 15. The assistance can cover, of course, rent, back rent, and forward rent. It is available for the tenant paid portion of subsidized rents. So that includes Section 8 and public housing. Can also be used to pay past due tenant paid utilities. Some other housing expenses, I don't have all the detail on that today, but that will be coming. And it's important to note that these are housing expenses that are, if they're in the past, they are past due. And forward, they don't need to be past due, but they can't be covered by other government programs. Renters who apply and who are approved would be processed for the maximum assistance available to them or what they request, whichever is lower. So if you are a renter or supporting a renter in applying, it is important to request as much assistance as the household is eligible for, so that we can maximize the amount of assistance that they get. As I said initially, we will accept applications to address back due rent or renters who are behind. And then once we feel good about clearing that backlog of renters with back rent, we will open to all applications, which will include renters who only need help going forward. So while we have done everything we can do to minimize paper requirements, as we know paperwork is a barrier, the rules are the rules, and the federal government wants to make sure we follow a few important policies. So we've attempted to put these in a few buckets to help people get ready and get organized. First, we are looking for some form of identification. That can include state IDs, tribal IDs, IDs that are international. Next, we need to confirm that your income is within the limits. If you file taxes, a 2020 1040 or tax filing for every adult, or one that covers all of the adults, is the fastest way to get this done. Of course, that is not everyone. Not everyone files. Not everyone will be ready to file for 2020. So we have a lot of other ways to demonstrate income and ask you to bring to the table what you have. So you may just have other annual documents, such as 1099s and W-2s. Right. If you don't have those, you may have pay stubs, deposit slips, receipts, a Venmo receipt that shows how you have been paid. All of those documents can be put into the system to show how you qualify under the income guidelines. We can also work with letters from programs that have determined your eligibility. If they are government programs, a few of the big examples I've already mentioned, such as food stamps or SNAP and MFIP. There are others in energy assistance, maybe locally, and we can accept a letter from the government as long as it's dated January 1st, 2020 or later. And finally, in circumstances where an adult in the household truly has no income, you will be able to sign to confirm that you have no income, and that can be done digitally. The next piece of paper that we need, or digital paper, in order to move your application forward is that you have a rent obligation. You are a renter. The easiest form of that is a lease. If your lease isn't current, you still may have a lease, but you may need a piece of paper from your landlord that shows your current rent amount so that we can process you for the full amount of rent. If you don't have a lease at all, we can still take a piece of paper from your landlord or digital paper that shows that you have a rent obligation in the home where you live. There are many other instances where a lease or a rent agreement may be more informal, and that may include a hotel or motel room as your housing, manufactured home lot lease, renting a room. We do want to work with you, and the folks at 211 and in our program guide will have information on what documents will help you get through that application. And finally, if we're paying past due expenses, we do need those bills. So for past due rent, that would be a statement or a ledger of your past due rent. That's something you can be working on now while we're getting ready to get that document from between the landlord and the renter if you don't have it. And for utilities, you could be tracking down those unpaid bills or demand letters for utility payments for renter paid utilities. Again, the online system offers digital signatures, and documents would need to be uploaded, but you may be able to take pictures of documents with your cell phone or get help with scanning if you want to apply online. We also can take them by mail, and we will offer lots of ways for you to see how to do so. You will want to get organized and get help if you need it to submit a fully completed application. The best application in our system is not that you do it fast, it's that it's fully complete. Once that application gets to our team who reviews it, they will start going through it line by line. And if things are missing or require follow-up to understand, they will reach out, they will get confirmation and work with you to understand what you've submitted. But those steps can create delays, and we know that every day counts when you're waiting for assistance. So as it comes to help, we are working with the Greater Twin Cities United Way 211 call line to provide assistance to people with questions. When you call 211, you will reach a highly trained service professional who can answer questions you may have as soon as you get ready to apply. And once RentHelpMN is open for applications, 211 will be able to answer questions that arise while you're applying. 211 offers assistance in many languages and offers accommodations. They can help whether you apply online or on paper, whether you have a service team working with you, or you are a friend helping someone with their application. 211 is there to assist in those situations. I will emphasize that we want every eligible renter in need to get this help. We know that online applications don't work for everyone. And we get it that documentation requirements alone can present a barrier. So we are doing everything we can with our partners to support renters to get access to this assistance. If you are comfortable with computers and have access to the internet, the online application is set up to be reasonably intuitive, but we really want you to get that application in and submitted so we can get to work reviewing it. So we have built in that support. Your first line of communication is 211. If you don't know where to start, call 211. Or maybe you are applying online, but you don't understand one of the questions in the application. You can call 211 to get that question answered so you can keep moving. The government partners in RentHelpMN, includes the state and local governments, have pulled together dozens of community organizations to take the time one-on-one with some renters who need culturally specific assistance or an extra push to get the materials together. To get to those community partners, we do ask that you reach out to 211. We want to support everyone where you are, and they are the best resource to do that connection. You may also find it easiest to do a paper application. Make those copies at your copy center and mail it in. And we will make the paper applications available through 211, downloadable on the site, and through our community partners. We know that waiting for help when your rent is late is stressful, and even more so when you don't know when the assistance will come through. The online application includes status updates you can use to communicate with your landlord or with our processing teams, the staff in our at RentHelpMN, if you have further questions. The 211 and partner resources, community partner resources, are also set up to assist with those status updates. Status updates may include that your application is pending or that it has been approved and is waiting for payment. And those are available to really help you know where you stand in the process once we're open for applications. So we have a couple of materials ready on the website now. The first shown here is for renters. It's the Get Ready checklist. It's now available for download on RentHelpMN.org website. This 2-page document has a list of the materials you will want to start collecting now as you prepare to apply. The checklist will also encourage you to reach out to your landlord to get the most recent copy of your rent agreement or other information. It will tell you what kind of income documents you need to track down and how else you can get ready to apply. We also have some frequently asked questions on this Get Ready step. And when we get to the full live application, we are working on even more frequently asked questions. Next, we know that landlords are also out there getting ready. So we have this document shown here, Landlords Get Ready. This is also a checklist and available now on the RentHelpMN.org website. To the landlords listening today, you can be some of the best partners for your tenants in helping them get ready. This checklist encourages you to do 3 things. 1, to alert your tenants of RentHelpMN. Second, to help your tenants be prepared to apply. And third, to get your portion of the documentation ready. A big part of the application is bringing documents that show the household is responsible for rent, as well as their back rent due obligation. You can make sure they have the most up-to-date paperwork in hand, or even email those documents if you know that works for the tenant. If you have the resources, you can also help your residents prepare and submit their complete applications. Maybe that's the use of a computer or internet, or printing and scanning, or getting stacks of paper applications ready for residents who aren't comfortable working online. As a business, as a landlord, you will also want to get ready to accept payment. We are looking for you to upload your W-9 and other information on your business the live application includes this landlord registration link, and larger management companies will want to be talking now about how they'll use the registration online. You should be talking to your staff about who will take the lead on setting up and managing accounts in the online system. Some larger managers may want to use a central office staff person to organize everything, while others may want to have site managers set everything up. Both can work, but it's important that you are organized and know what plan you have so that you don't do both. It can be confusing. We'll figure it out, but it certainly could be confusing. Finally, we move to the big question. I am sure you're wondering, when will the program open for applications? RentHelpMN will open for applications in the coming weeks. We will open when we know we are ready to accept online applications, process applications, and issue payments. Those pieces are all in the works, being tested, details worked out, and we are really moving toward that go live date. You can continue to check the website, RentHelpMN.org, for updates. And 211 is available now, today, to take calls and address your questions to help you get ready. And finally, we will spread the word far and wide when the program is open for applications through emails, social media, radio ads, digital campaigns, direct mailings. If you found us here today, you will find us when we are live. We want you to know. We also don't want anyone to feel like you only have a few hours or a moment to get this application in. Minnesota has a really good amount of money to provide this rental assistance. And we are confident that we will be able to take applications and process them. So the best application is a complete application, not a fast application. You don't need to rush. We do want you to get the application in because we want to assist, but this won't be a system that is opening and closing or where there's only a short window or a deadline. We're opening, we will stay open and communicate if anything changes. So some of you are here because you are renters, some are landlords, and I'm sure many of you are here because you want to support your neighbors, your friends, members of your faith community, of your tenants, and we encourage you to share the materials from the RentHelpMN.org website. Currently, these include the Renters Get Ready and Landlords Get Ready checklists that you just saw. And once we are open for applications, we will have a social media campaign covering all of the popular platforms, and we hope that you will share those links and share those messages far and wide. We'll also make other marketing materials available for you to share, including a flyer, poster, website banner, text messaging language, and email scripts. The materials will all be available in English, Spanish, Hmong, and Somali. With that, I will turn us back over to Commissioner Ho.
Rachel, thank you so much for all of that information. And this is the part where we've got people monitoring the chat for questions. And Jessica, do you have a first question for us?
Thank you, Commissioner. I do. First question I have for you is, I'm a landlord. What if my tenant moved out while they still owed rent? Can I apply without them to get this back debt paid?
This is an issue that we're still waiting for an answer from the U.S. Department of the Treasury out in Washington, D.C. on. It's a question that a lot of states have asked about. Rachel, is there any updated news? Last I heard is if they stick with the language they've put out, we can't, but they're thinking about whether or not they might do revised guidance. Is that correct?
Yes, Treasury, our regulator on this, is considering this question. They've made it clear all along, assistance is to the renter households. That's who is eligible, income determination, housing instability, and the other requirements. And so certainly it doesn't read today that we could assist the back payment if the household is no longer in place.
This has been a kind of complicated time to implement a new program because it was signed into law by the former president in the middle of the transition of government. So you had two different teams of the Treasury Department taking a look at it. So it has been an interesting time to implement something at this scale. Jessica, next question.
Will renters who receive a subsidy for their housing be eligible for this program? So for example, public housing or housing choice vouchers.
I'm pretty certain, Rachel, it's if you can't pay your tenant portion, that's still eligible.
Yes, absolutely. In Section 8, public housing, other voucher types, other income qualified housing, yes, the tenant paid portion of rent and utilities is an eligible expense going back and going forward. And we know that people in subsidized housing have also been very impacted by COVID beyond what is possible in the programs they're already in. So we are grateful that we can assist. And that's very clear in the federal rules that we can assist households in subsidized.
Great. Jessica?
Is this program offered across the state, and will individual counties and cities offer their own programs?
The money went out to any jurisdiction over 200,000. This is like good Trivial Pursuit for me, Rachel. It's the city of Minneapolis, the city of St. Paul, Anoka County, Dakota County, Hennepin and Ramsey County, and Washington County all have their own funds. We are working together on the shared application and that 211 front door so that at the front end, when we launch RentHelpMN, that it will look the same regardless of which jurisdiction's money is being used to pay the landlord or the utility company.
Yeah, I think what's important for people to understand here, you don't need to go Google Washington County program, Dakota County program. The application is the RentHelpMN. Their logos are on the RentHelpMN website, as is the state of Minnesota. The resources are somewhat flexible, and local governments may have some other design that they work with community partners with the same resources. But if you are looking for help for yourself or your tenants, family or friend, go through RentHelpMN. That's the application, that's the portal.
Of course, if you need other types of assistance like medical assistance or food assistance, that's a good time to call your county, no matter which county in the state. Jessica?
Is there a maximum cap on assistance?
There's a time clock on assistance, but not a maximum dollar amount. Right, Rachel?
That's correct. We've not set a maximum dollar amount. We will review applications for general reasonableness, but essentially we want to help people with the situation they're in. And that's the totals of their back rent and other eligible expenses and future rent. So we have decided affirmatively to not put a cap on total assistance.
Okay, Jessica, ready for another one?
Questions on how we can apply. One is, can we apply by phone? And then the second question is, can we apply with a paper application, and how will that process work?
Rachel, I think I'll just toss that right to you because you used good words and I don't want to confuse anybody.
Yes, the paper application is absolutely an option. So if you're comfortable online, it is a pretty quick process to do once you have all the materials in hand. But if you're not comfortable online, paper application is for you. So we will make that downloadable from the website if you just want to get organized using the paper application and then apply online. But for those who really are looking to work on paper, we are there for you. We will have copies out in the field with partners. We will have the option to request one be mailed to you, and it would arrive in an envelope that says RentHelpMN on it. So hopefully you don't throw it away, and you can fill it in, attach any materials, sign it, and it will include a postage paid return envelope to get it back to us so that we can get it entered into our system. So we know many people that is going to be the best way to get this done. A little bit pokier. There's mailing time in between, but once we get it, we'll get it in the system and start working on that file.
Rachel, does that mean that you can't apply completely by phone? Because there are some certifications and some documents that you need to produce, right?
That's right. A complete phone application through our call center wouldn't work. There's just no way for the tenant to give the required signatures and permissions without being physically participating in the application.
Great. Thanks, Jessica. Next question.
Can I apply more than once if I get behind later on my rent? So for example, even if I did not apply for the forward rent to start, what happens when I become behind later?
Yeah, that's a great question. Rachel?
Yes, do keep coming back. So a household who applies because they have a back rent obligation, we do encourage you to, at that time, ask for 3 months forward. And it says so in the application. We encourage you, if you expect to live in the same housing situation, ask for the 3 months forward so that we can go ahead and process the back plus forward. But once you have an account set up and you've been determined eligible, you can keep coming back to reapply. This does come from the federal rules for forward rent coming every 3 months to get additional 3 months of assistance forward. There's no limit on how much you can request going back, except that it's only to March 2020 or April 1st for rent 2020. But once you are registered, determined eligible, you have an account, you can use that online or through 211 or through paper to reapply and just re-up. It's a much shorter process for those 3 months forward.
It's a good time to revisit the clock. Does the clock start from your first month of assistance and then it just ends on the calendar, even if you don't need assistance for some months in the middle? Or is it just that total number of months of assistance, even if it's spread out over the course of 2 years or something?
It would be the total number of months of assistance, even if it's spread out over 2 years. So if there was a pause or there was a time within the last year where you almost caught up on your full rent, you don't want to use up your whole month of assistance for $100, you could not request assistance and keep that clock moving into the future. So mostly we are encouraging you, ask for what you need for back rent and ask for what you need for forward. But if you are paused, that clock would stop and restart for a total of 15 months.
This isn't something that we see very often in housing assistance, except for the fact that, for example, if you have the Section 8 program, you know that you're going to be getting it the next month and the next month. And so it's just, I think it might feel a little different for some folks compared to emergency assistance, but it's really designed to really create that peace of mind for both the tenant and the landlord, that they're going to have a few months going forward, that no matter what happens, they're good, there won't be delays. And the other thing that's nice for us is once we get that first batch of people who are behind into the system, if we're paying forward for them, they don't need to check back in with us for a while, which gives us time then to open up the second phase for others. So this is complicated, I know, but we'll have people there to ask specific questions as we go. Jessica, next question.
Are non-citizens eligible to apply?
Rachel.
We do not ask for any materials in the application related to citizenship or documentation status. We do not ask any questions that would indicate to us one's documentation status. And we have lots of options for how to demonstrate income, place of residency. That should work for everyone.
As well as ID.
As well as for ID. We really are just looking for who are you in the ID. And really, we are looking for all renters in Minnesota to access this assistance. And we only ask the questions that are related to rent and income.
Thanks, Jessica. Next question.
If a tenant receives other assistance before through programs like the COVID Housing Assistance Program, am I still eligible to apply for this program?
The answer is yes. For folks who aren't aware, we operated with many, many partners, a COVID-19 housing assistance program from the end of August till early December of last year. In fact, I think the final checks just went out the door this last week or so. But that was a separate pot of money with separate rules. So Rachel, if I recall correctly, this starts the clock all over again. Anything that you weren't able to get covered in the old program would be eligible in the new program. Obviously, if you already got paid for back rent with the old program, you wouldn't come in for those same months in the new program.
That's right. If it's still back due, the clock does not include COVID housing assistance program assistance. It's only related to the December stimulus funds and beyond.
Thanks, Jessica.
Can the assistance be used for other things like cleaning and damage charges, moving expenses, security deposits, and late fees?
We've got some advanced beginners out there in the question chat, Rachel. I know that there's a couple different pathways that still aren't completely fleshed out, but in terms of the things that Jessica listed, do you have some guidance for folks today?
Hopefully I memorized them, but we had 4, and I would repeat that we are still right down to the wire working out some of the details of the other. We're looking at those expenses that are tied to the housing stability for the household. So we could say definitely yes to landlord charged late fees and other fees that are tied to the rental situation. They do need to be reasonable. And generally they always are. So we are looking for those reasonable fees as Minnesota landlord tenant law. And then we're able to do security deposits potentially. Federal government has given us that flexibility, but we'll be working through those program guidelines in a lot more detail as the few days ahead move along.
Next question.
How can people with disabilities access this program?
We certainly want to make sure that people of all abilities have access to the program. And Rachel, do you have some specific guidance on that?
Yes, certainly. We are looking at every aspect of the program, open to working with some of our stakeholders to make sure we have thought of all the aspects of the program. I'll admit right now, the RentHelpMN.org website didn't meet our standards for readers, so we're working on it. But in general, once we are live, materials that can be read by reading software, but calling 211 for accommodations to assist a household through the entire questions, answers, and application period. 211 is set up to really be that resource to get you going.
Great. Jessica?
Speaking of which materials will you have translated and in what languages?
Rachel, I'll toss that to you. The application for sure, and information about how to complete it.
Yeah, so translation services, in terms of translated written materials, we are working with Spanish, Somali, Hmong, in addition to English, and the online application. We also have marketing materials in those languages listed. But 211 is a great resource for language services beyond what's listed in the English, Spanish, Somali, and Hmong, and working to cover every language spoken in Minnesota and beyond. So we certainly are working to make sure we have somebody who can assist households, whether that is in writing or with translation services.
And this is where our field partners, community-based organizations, CAP agencies, or tribal governments, others, are also a great assist to the agency because they're tailored to working in specific communities. They oftentimes have staff who are proficient in many languages. Next question.
For tenants, will our incomes be taxed by the amount of assistance we receive?
That too is a great issue. So first of all, if the payment goes directly to the landlord, that's not considered tenant income at all. Rachel, you want to talk about the more technical parts of the federal and state taxes in case the money goes directly to the tenant, and also landlord tax issues?
Yes, I realize we haven't had a chance yet to talk about how payment flows today, so we'll take just a minute on that. So when payments are made per the federal rules, we first, our staff, not the tenant, work to pay the person owed. So the payee, that would be the landlord or the utility company directly. And we reach out and attempt to pay them. When we pay a landlord or utility company, that's regular business income. The IRS has put out a letter. We'll eventually get that linked on our website that makes it clear that that's the expectation, that funds that go to a business, a landlord, a utility company are taxable business income. But if a landlord or utility company, but I think we're talking more landlords, is non-responsive or does not want to participate in the program and accept payment, then we move to pay the tenant. And we will offer that assistance directly to the tenant to then use for their housing expenses. And when the funds go to the tenant, in the federal bill and in the federal guidance that has come out, it is very clear funds that go to the tenant are not taxable income at the federal level and do not impact any benefit eligibility for households for any federally funded programs. We still have some work to do to help you understand what that means for state taxes, state programs, and the certificate of rent paid that you receive as a renter. So we have a little bit of work to do there. It's definitely on our list, but for that big number and the big programs, big eligibility programs that are federal, the bill and the guidance are very clear that is not taxable and does not impact eligibility.
Great, Jessica?
More on how can a landlord help a tenant really with this application, and specifically, will a landlord also then be able to confirm the status of an application of their tenant?
Those are great questions. And I first just want to acknowledge that we know many landlords worked with their tenants in our last program from last year. And, you know, it's the on-site helper in many instances to help do it. And it's such a win-win, right? Because the tenant gets their back rent paid and the landlord gets their rent due and is able to in turn pay the landlord's bills. So so having that relationship and working together is really the best way to do it. Rachel, do you want to talk more about the specifics of that?
Yeah, so a landlord can certainly act as a friend and helper to a tenant to get them into the online system and applying. And so we've included some of those resources in the Get Ready Landlord checklist, and we'll continue to build out those resources so that landlords can sit with virtually or physically their tenants and make sure that they have the opportunity to apply. But landlords also can register in the online system. So for any who are internet users, we have a registration. That's where you'd bring in information so that we can pay you, including the payment information and W-9. And once you're registered and verified, you actually are able to see very small amount of information to protect the tenant privacy, but status updates on applications of the addresses you own and if they are in the works. And we do think that's a great benefit to the software system, that you'd be able to confirm on your end. You know, tenant tells you they have applied, they do get a letter that says that they've successfully applied, and then you can go for that peace of mind and look in the online system and see if that application is in process.
That's a great improvement over the COVID-19 housing assistance program that we put together on the fly last year. But just to be clear, landlords can't register today. They need to wait for the program to go live.
They do, and once it is live, there's a registration link that is separate from the apply link, and we'll work on some manuals to help people understand roles, you know, how to use the system and maximize it.
Well, the nice thing about it is once a landlord's in the system, they don't have to keep going in and keep going in. It's just more about just connecting the tenant to that landlord. Jessica.
Income documents need to be within the last 120 days, or what time period does my income need to demonstrate?
This is definitely a Rachel question.
It is a complicated question, so I'm going to do my best because it's really important. If your income is documented in annual form, you can bring that. And if you have a tax form, a 1040, you have filed taxes for 2020, and this is the federal rules. So if you bring that tax form to the application and you have it, that will keep you eligible through the life of the program, so that we don't have to keep income testing your household if you continue to need future rent assistance. However, that is not everyone, and it's certainly a great document if you have it. But if you don't, in the application, you will see that whatever documentation you have to demonstrate income, whether that's the prior 60 days to applying, or other annual documents, or other benefit documents, so an eligibility determination from a government program dated January 1st, 2020 or later. So all of those can work in different formats. And I know some of the hypothetical scenarios would be a household where things have really changed. Your 1040 would show a pretty healthy income, but that's not your situation today. Someone is no longer in the household, or other benefits have run out and you don't have nearly the income you had in 2020. You'd look at that 60 days and you'd show us what's been happening in your household for those 60 days using the application system. And we would work with you where you are now, because that's going to be the best way to show your eligibility for you as a household in that situation.
Great answer, Rachel. Jessica?
Will our application include a third-party release to speak with county assistance offices to help clients get their benefit amount applied for?
That is a question I have not encountered yet, Rachel.
So the application does include a third-party release, and I do want to state that but it is not for what is asked today. So there's quite a bit of information we ask of you, and so there's quite a bit of protection that we need to wrap around that data. There are data privacy warnings as you get into the application and throughout, and about our use of the information as well. So we do need to contact anyone you've requested assistance go to, so landlord and utility providers, but we do not have a connection then to other workers unless you've authorized them outside of our application process. It's kind of an in the weeds question, but generally the system is really set up for an emergency program and not to communicate with your other support networks. And we even tried to get there, and it's not entirely efficient to try to do that with an emergency rental assistance program.
But county financial workers or county case managers might actually be great helpers in terms of helping you figure out which documents you need to do this program. So thank you for that. I'm guessing there's a county out there. Jessica.
The application asks about criminal record.
Rachel.
There is absolutely no question or document request within the application that I think would even indicate that, and we don't have an interest in knowing.
I think one of the things that's the most exciting about this program is that it's the federal government just trying to help people deal with the economic impacts of the pandemic, and not trying to ration out a scarce resource as we're so often stuck doing in housing. This is really more on the scale of the stimulus checks, that people might have received last April and last summer and in January. So it's really just about trying to bring financial relief to make both renters and landlords whole. And it really is of a pretty significant size, and hopefully is therefore going to be available to get us through into the economic recovery, which we know will happen much faster for some than for others. And so we're really just thinking about the fact that for folks who are going to be kind of hurting financially in the long term, there's a way that this program could be there for you too. So I just really, there's some things that I just am really impressed that the Congress and the former president really thought through on this, in order to just say, if you need help, if you're a renter, let's help you out. It's a win-win. Jessica?
How do we verify that we've been COVID impacted financially? This is from a tenant.
Rachel, that's a technical question, so I'll let you take that.
Yeah, certainly. That is a federal eligibility threshold, is that the household has been experienced hardship, either having qualified for unemployment or been unemployed or been financially impacted. And we provide in the application a way to move through that section without uploading any pieces of paper by giving some examples for you to choose. It's a pretty long list of examples of the way people have been impacted. That includes increased costs because of the pandemic, increased costs because of childcare, or increased childcare responsibilities. And we even offer an other section so that you can explain how COVID has impacted your household. Really, for anyone who is unable to pay their rent right now in a pandemic, we are really looking for you to just, share with us what that has looked like for you, attest to that or sign that section and move through.
Great. Jessica?
Will homeowners be eligible to apply for utility assistance?
This is one where the Congress was just really clear. It's emergency rental assistance for renters. Now, the good news is that Congress, in the bill that they just passed in the middle of March, have included funding for a new homeowner assistance program. And we're waiting again for details from the US Department of the Treasury in Washington, D.C. to help us understand how they're interpreting the statute that Congress passed. But we expect that Minnesota will be able to stand up assistance for homeowners. There also are a lot of utility assistance programs that are out there that aren't tied specifically to whether you're a renter or a homeowner. So I think in many instances, 211 is always there to help direct, or your county is always a good resource if you're behind. But help is on the way for homeowners. It's just going to take a little longer because the program we're standing up now was passed by Congress in December. And this new program for homeowners was just passed a few weeks ago. Rachel, anything you'd add to that?
We do provide the resource for the low income heating energy assistance program on our RentHelpMN.org site. And I am watching little email tickers come up, and I know that we've also connected a state agency that works on energy and utility assistance with our 211 trained team so that they have even more robust talking points around energy assistance and utility assistance for all callers who are looking to get that level of help.
Given the amount of federal stimulus dollars that are flowing through many programs right now, I would just encourage people, whether you fit this program or not, it's a good time to just pick up the phone and see if there's help available. And a lot of us are sorting through all the details of all these different programs. As we get smarter, we'll make sure that we have links to other resources available on RentHelpMN.org. Jessica? Jessica?
Utilities are covered, and will internet be available to be covered?
Can you cover that one from the top? You came in a little late.
Please describe the full utilities that will be paid in this application, including internet.
Okay, Rachel?
Yeah, so for utilities, it's a good list and it is in the application once it goes live. And that includes water and sewer, gas, electric, your heating, bulk fuels if they're tenant paid, such as purchasing propane, oil, firewood for the home that you live in. We are not opening with covering internet or phone service. There are other resources available, and those are linked on our site through the FCC. But at this time, we're really focused on those housing stability costs of rent and the utilities that could be threatened to be shut off for the household.
We went over this last night. The FCC is the Federal Communications Commission, we think. But if you go to fcc.gov and search for internet help, looks like a pretty easy centralized federal online portal that you could be eligible for as much as $50 a month in utility assistance. I'll just recognize that being connected has been really important as we attempt to work from home and teach our kids from home and get signed up for vaccines or testing or whatever else we've had to do in this COVID year. So it's an important issue that we're paying close attention to. But we also know that if there's other money available for some of these things, that there's always been a need for additional rent help. And we don't want to have it all go to internet and then miss out helping some people on their rent. Jessica?
We have questions around landlords again. So coming back to landlords, could a landlord 100% apply on behalf of residents who are delinquent on rent, or does the resident need to participate and provide income and other relevant documentation?
Yeah, the Congress and the US Treasury Department are really clear about this, that you need to have the tenant specific information in an application. So a landlord could certainly help gather, and a landlord could provide internet access, a scanner, do a lot of things to help a tenant complete an application. But a landlord cannot 100% apply without the tenant participating. And that's from the US Congress and the US Department of Treasury. That wasn't a Minnesota decision. It's a little confusing because some of the local units of government ran landlord-specific programs where you did not need a tenant sign-off with some of the stimulus money they were using last year. But that was when local jurisdictions could define their own programs. This is a program that's been defined by the Congress and interpreted by the US Department of the Treasury in Washington, D.C. So we have to play by their rules. And so we think the best thing, the win-win here, is when tenants and landlords work together to create a complete application. So that's the best partnership, and that's what's going to result in the quickest processing of an application. Next question.
What is the appeal process if a tenant is denied assistance?
That is definitely a Rachel question.
The appeal process is another thing that we will get more detail out. There's sort of a difference between appeal and apply again. And so there is no penalty for if your application is reviewed and then your situation changes, you've been denied, that you could come back and apply with that updated information. And then we will offer a formal appeal process, pretty government standard to do so. So that will be available as well. We also have teams set up to make sure that all the circumstances you might be thinking of, all the situations that don't neatly fit in a box are that we've built support around those so that we can really look at what the circumstances are, understand the household situation, and work with them.
Next question.
We are at time. And so our last question today is, how do we get ready?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main message of today is RentHelpMN.org is up, and it has get ready information for both landlords and for tenants. The program is coming soon. And so if you spend some time thinking about what you need and how to work together to have that ready, it's going to be easier for you to apply. But for me, the second half of the message is this isn't like a lottery with a limited window. There is going to be time to apply. And so please don't feel like you need to rush. We received a lot of money in January from the December bill, and we're slated to get 2 more installments of money from the federal government based on what the Congress passed in March. So there's a lot of money in Minnesota right now to do this. So please know that help is on the way, and please get ready. Rachel?
Help is on the way. Get ready. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I want to thank the helpers. Thanks, everybody.